It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's one Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew version 1.0 deck list of the Commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto. It's ABB, baby. Always be brewing. And that's what we're doing here today. Taking an oldie but a goodie and updating with some of the new stuff coming out and taking another shot at it today. Today, we are covering Imoti, Celebrant of Bounty. A 5-mana Simic Snake Druid with Cascade. So we Cascade when we cast Imoti. And then Imoti says that spells we cast with mana value 6 or greater have Cascade. Imoti is a Cascade engine, wanting you to ramp up to its cost so you can get it out. And then play big spells or creatures to Cascade from, getting so much value. I actually had an Imoti deck in the past. I took it apart because it was a little sweatier of an Imoti deck, caring about things like extra turns and big value spells. I decided this time around to focus on Morty more on Stompy. Big Simic creatures, especially with things like the new Coma. Just to have some fun, get some big creatures out with some big value, cascade in some crazy stuff, and just have some fun. So we're going to talk about ramping up to the cost and then just getting to Cascade and just having a good time. I think ramp is so important in this deck because we need to get to 5 to Imoti, and we need to keep going. We need to keep having more mana so that we can cast bigger and bigger things. Visions of Zendikar, 4 mana to come in and get any 2 basic lands, put them on the battlefield tapped. And if we defeat the battle, turns over to an elemental on the backside that can actually tap for mana as well. Fennec Garona is probably one of my favorite newer cards from the last couple sets. Can add a green mana, but if we have a creature with power 4 or greater, that has 4 green mana instead. A very great ability, especially once we start dealing with the big creatures we want to cast. Galandra from Commander Legends adds a green, and if you use it to cast a spell with mana value 6 or greater, you actually get to draw a card, which is a great ability, right? Refilling our hand, getting us more big things to cast. I love that this isn't a rider. You get this green mana no matter what, but if you fulfill it, right, you get the upside. Gwenna can tap for 2 mana of any color combinations, but only to cast creatures or activate abilities of creatures. And if you cast a creature with power 5 or greater, you get to untap Gwenna and put a counter on it, potentially allowing you to use it multiple times per turn. Inga and Eska combine to let all your creatures tap for mana, only to cast creature spells though. And whenever we cast a creature spell, if we use 3 or more mana from creatures to cast it, draw a card. This is a great ability because a lot of these mana dorks have the ability to tap for multiple mana, meaning that we may be able to fulfill that to draw cards. Selvala decided another way to get lots of mana. For a green and tap it, we can add X mana in any combination of colors where X is the greatest power among creatures we control. So the bigger our creatures, the more mana we get. And if we play a creature with power greater than every other creature's power, we get to draw a card too. So adds a little bit, right, of a ramp, or a card draw on top of it as well. Snapping Voidcraw, a 3-mana creature that just taps for double colorless. Silverwalled Sage can tap for 3 mana of any one color to only cast creatures. And then Troyan from Wilds of Eldraine, tapping for a blue and a green, but can only be used to cast spells with mana value 5 or greater, or spells in their X. So it can be used to cast Imoti, and then we just want to be using bigger and bigger spells. The important thing to note about the ramp is it is all pretty low on the mana scale. The reason this is important, combined with the other ramp spells, Rampant Growths, Cultivates, that kind of thing, is that you know that even if you cast a big creature and you hit into a low mana spell, it's always going to be something that's going to make it better for you next turn, right? You obviously want to be cascading into other big spells, but if you can't, at least you're cascading into ramp. It's going to make it even better for you on the next turn. Now, this is just creature ramp I talked about. We do have other cards, right, in the deck that care about land ramp, but it's still important to talk about because we want to get to Imoti as quick as we can so we can start ramping up. Here, I want to talk about some big spells that we can cast. It's not all just creatures. We can cast spells as well. Amanatu's Augury was always a fun one for me because I think it just has such massive upside. You exile the top 8 cards of your library. You put a land from among them onto the battlefield. Then, until end of turn, for each non-land card type, we can cast a spell of that type from among those cards without paying its mana cost for free. And remember, this deck is full of huge spells and huge creatures, meaning that we have potentially get free spell cast and free cascade, right, for just 8 mana. Mind's Desire is the interesting one. Shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Till the end of our turn, we can pay that card without paying its mana cost. It has Storm, so Mind's Desire could potentially have that happen multiple times. leading us into these massive cascade loops where we're just going to get big value. Mnemonic Deluge for 9 mana lets us exile an instant sorcery from our graveyard, copy it 3 times, and here's the important text. You cast the copies without paying their mana cost. Meaning if you pick a spell big enough, you will cascade, right, on each of those copies. Now, Deluge exiles itself, but that's A-okay. Think about deluging into Mind's Desire, and you can see kind of the real fun that would happen on that board. We are playing at least 1 or 2 extra turn spells in the deck. It's just not the main goal of the deck. We're playing Nexus of Fate only because it shovels itself back into your library, meaning that you have the chance to hit it again another time. Now, in the more sweatier versions of Imoti, you would pick the extra turn spells that don't exile themselves when they're done, so that you can replay them out of the graveyard with things like Mnemonic Deluge, right? Sublime Epiphany, a big 6 mana instant that has your choice to do any number of the following. You do 1 or more, counter a spell, counter an ability, return a permanent to its hand, create a token that's a copy of a creature we control, and have a player draw a card. This is great in a world where you can counter a spell and get any number of the other ones you can just for big value. Skullport Nexus may look odd, but in a deck that has creatures, we want a way to protect our creatures. What I think is really cool about Skullspore Nexus is it can come down for just 2 green mana if we have a big creature. It's still 8 mana value on the stack. We just only played 2 green for it, right? We could cheat it out and get real cascade value from it. But it says whenever one of our non-token creatures we control die, we get to make a dinosaur with base power toughness equal to the total power of those creatures, meaning we can hopefully replace the creatures that are dying. And then for 2 mana, we can just double a creature's power. This is great when we start talking about some of these big creatures that we have that have trample. Mind's Dilation, a big enchantment that says whenever an opponent casts their first spell each turn, that player exiles top card of their library, and if it's a non-land card, we cast it without paying its mana cost. This is great because we can get some stuff off our opponents, but potentially more cascades depending on what that thing is. And then probably 2 of my favorite cards in the deck, for what the deck's just trying to accomplish, is Omniscience and one with the Multiverse. Omniscience just got that pretty reprint in Foundations. You cast all spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. Beautiful. No mana for big things in Cascade. Count me in. I love it. It's 10 mana to get in there, but hey, you do, if you have Imoti out, right, you cascade off that 10 and still have a way to get big value. And then on the one with the Multiverse, you get to look at your top card anytime. You can play lands and cast spells off the top. That's anytime. But once during each of your turns, you can play a spell from your hand or off the top for free without paying its mana cost. This is a huge ability. Again, making it so you can get that one thing for free, get those cascades, get the value working, and then you still have the options, right, to play things off the top. Wheel and Deal, extend your hand. One of the Multiverse is such an interesting card for that, and it being 8 mana means that we could still cascade off of it. But I think this is where the deck just, to me, is where I enjoy this as a green player, right? Some of these big, huge creatures you get to cast. Apex Devastator becomes quintuple cascade with Imoti, cascading 5 times off 10 CMC is going to hit almost everything in our deck, meaning for big value for just a 10 mana cost. Remember that when a spell gets cascade, it's an uncast trigger, meaning if somebody counters the spell, you still get the cascade and you can still cascade. So it's kind of interesting. I've seen a lot of times where you go to cascade and somebody says, nope, I don't want you to have that spell. And the spell I reveal is even worse than the one that I cast. And it just goes to show you sometimes it's worth waiting because you can still respond to the spell that gets cascaded into. Astral Dragon's a really interesting card. This sees a lot more play in things like Miram where it gets really abused. But it says when it comes in, you create 2 tokens that are copies of a non-target, non-creature permanent. That could be lands, enchantments, artifacts, except now they're 3/3 dragons, in addition to other types, creatures, and have flying. That's pretty cool. At minimum, this could copy artifacts, this could copy your mana rocks, this could copy enchantments, this could copy lands and make them into dragons. There's a lot of ways you could take this card. But hey, it's 8 and gets you that cascade. Brylan says whenever it comes in or whenever you cast a spell with mana value 6 or greater, you can return a target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. This is a really key ability, and we have this on a couple creatures, and we want to see this if possible. Remember that when you cascade, you cast the spell you go into without paying its mana cost, meaning that Brylan and these types of effects that go off on cast are going to see hopefully many of these per turn, bouncing our opponent's key things back to their hand, getting that incremental control over the course of turns. Galta is a great example of a creature that we can get down for really cheap that cascades for a lot, costing X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures we control. Almost all the time is going to come down for just 2 single green mana and is going to cascade for 12, again hitting most of our deck. Giant Ankeg is a thing I want to try here. It's an 8 mana Ward 2 that gives all other creatures trample and Ward 2. It just feels great. And a deck that wants to have a lot of huge creatures, protect them a little bit, give them trample to hit hard. Hullbreaker Horror is another example of these bouncers. Whenever you cast a spell, choose up to 1. We can return a spell we don't control back to its owner's hand. This could be a way to potentially counter a spell, right, and putting it back in its opponent's hand. Or we can just return a non-token permanent or non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So again, bounce something back, right? This is a key ability we want to see when we can see it. But Coma World Eater is really the main reason that I wanted to redo this deck, because I love Coma. I love the original. I love the new one. They're both fun green, but fun big creatures. Both 7 mana. Both houses of value. Can't be countered. The new one, Trample Ward 4. When it deals damage to a player, you make some Coma Coils. The old one, you get a Coma Coil every turn, and you can sacrifice another Serpent, so one of the Coma Coils, to do one of 2 things. I really like both of these creatures, and they feel like nice middle-of-the-road bodies for us, which is scary to say in a deck like this, but they are to have some fun with. Primeval Protector is another one that could potentially come down for very cheap, costing 1 less to cast for each creature our opponents control. So it could just come down for 1 mana and cascade for 11. When it comes in, put a counter on it for each other creature we control. So it can get even bigger, right? And better. Well, here's where we're going to play some of the new cards. Cyrus 7 Deaths from Foundations needs to be in here. It's a house of value with 7 different keywords for 7 mana. We love it, and we can cascade from it. Tidespout Tyrant's probably one of my favorite of the bouncers because it's a little bit meaner. This is when you cast a spell, you can return target permanent to its owner's hand. This means you can hit lands. I would suggest you not hit lands unless you have to. But what I generally try to do with these bounce type effects, and what I tried to do in Imoti when I played it, was bounce everything that you can back first before you start targeting lands. But you may find yourself in a scenario with Tidespout Tyrant where you start to get enough of the stacks that you need to start bouncing lands, and a lot of the times that will most of the time provide the game a natural end. I can remember games where I bounced, all of my opponent's lands back to their hand. And when you're that far ahead and their opponents don't even have any lands down, or if you bounce half their lands back, I mean, it's going to be very difficult for them to mount a response. So, if you're going to start targeting lands, just be advised that you could create a game state that's not going to be very fun for your opponents. What I always tried to do is, if I was at the point in the game where, and it does happen from time to time, you have Hullbreaker Horror and Tidespout out, or you have Brineland and Tidespout out. And let's say I bounced all my opponent's non-land permanents back to their hand, and you start casting more spells, and I've got 4 or 5 Tidespout triggers or 4 or 5, triggers left. Most of the time, I would just offer the game and say, hey, do we want to keep going? Do you want me to start bouncing your lands? Like, it seems mean, but the truth is, it's like, I've always found a lot of times if you can demonstrate a combo and you give the other players the option, they may just say, hey, we don't think we can come back from it. Let's move on to the next one. Let's save ourselves the 5 or 6 minutes it's going to take for you to continue to cascade through all your things, keep going. To me, it's a respect and fairness thing over a, quote unquote, I'm winning thing. Because as much as I enjoy decks like this that have these crazy play patterns and you get to learn all these cool things about the deck, some players are not going to want to sit there and watch you cascade for 10 minutes or 8 minutes or 6 minutes. And I think it's that respect of just knowing what the deck can accomplish and what it can possibly do. So if you do see yourself getting into these bounce routes of things, just be aware of what it can do to a table and kind of what the interactions can be there. The Pride of Hulklades is kind of an interesting one. Kind of like Galta to me. Costs X less to cast, where X is the total toughness of creatures you control. So you can go down for just 1 green mana. 11, right? Cascading from 11. It's a 2/5 with Defender, but it says for 4 mana until end of turn, target creature you control gets +1/+0. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw cards equal to its toughness and can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So for 4 mana, it can draw a ton of cards, or you can pick another creature to attack and draw some cards. I just like that it cascades for big mana, and it does give you the option to card draw as well, which is important, right, as we churn through our deck. But I've said it before on the show, I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. Again, I posited this as Imoti coming back, but being a little bit more about Stompy versus some of the big green or the big blue value. But I want to show you where you could continue to push the deck forward if you want to, mainly with your wallet, right? With budget. There's a lot of really great cards, especially some of those extra turn spells that you could start adding to this deck to push yourself forward in value. There's 3 or 4 great 5 mana extra turn spells you can add, and you could add something like Expropriate, which is going to cascade from it. Note the 5 mana extra turn spells won't cascade from, but that's okay. You don't need them to. You could also purposefully go play the ones that are more expensive. Time Stretch, Temporal Trespass, these 8, 9, 7 mana extra turn spells that are overcosted, but we get to benefit because we get to cascade from them. And now you could create a world where you could cast extra turn spell and cascade into an extra turn spell. It's probably the sweatier way to do it, but I'm telling you it is an option. We do also have the option to add more big money creatures that are continue to devastate our opponents. Ulamog the Defiler, Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, options of Eldrazi's that are going to still cascade but deal us big value when we cast them. Things like Jin Kataxi's Progress Tyrant can help us and shut our opponents down a little bit at the same time. These are just options to pick the way you kind of want to push your deck forward and do it that way. But let's get into our play tests with Imoti. It's the thing we love to do here on the channel, and I love doing it every time. Keeping a 3-lander with Galanra, Kodama the East Tree, an interesting card that says whenever a permanent you control enters, if it wasn't put on the battlefield with Kodama's ability, you could put a permanent with equal or less a mana value from your hand on the battlefield. So a great way to cheat things. And we got the Dilation, we got the Galta. I think really we're just looking to get towards Galanra here. Get it set up. We see up the Beanstalk. Interesting. I think right now there's no way for me to play. Oh, there is a way for me to play it on turn 2. We would take turn 3 off unless we draw another land, right? Because Reju is going to come in untapped. Hedgemage is going to come in tapped no matter what. But if I play Hedgemage, then at least at the moment, Vine Glimmer is right going to come in tapped. I think we'll play the Hedgemage turn 1. Let's see what we see. We see a forest. Well, that's perfect. That fixed all of our problems, right? Turn 2, we draw the forest. We'll play that Vine Glimmer showing the forest, and we'll draw off the Beanstalk, right? It comes in, draw. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, draw, right? So we're doing well. We're getting ourselves up. We see Summerwald Sage, which I actually like a lot better than Galanra just because it can add some more mana, right? So now we would have 7 mana next turn, right? Still, the point is still Imoti, right? But again, we're getting ourselves up towards that. So here, there's actually a world where we can Nature's Lore and Imoti. But let's Imoti first, right? We want to see what we have access to. Here's kind of the awkward thing. We have the Cascade and the Up the Beanstalk. Which would we rather do first? I don't have any good anecdotes for this. It's your choice. I'll choose to draw first. Okay, well, Soaring would have been nice, but that's A-okay. We see Double Major, which is actually great, right? So copy target creature spell we control, Imoti. And we, except it isn't legendary if it's legendary. So we get a copy of it. It's not considered a cast. So we actually don't get the Beanstalk or a Cascade. But now, right, we can Soaring, right, into that Nature's Lore. Just go get another land, put it in tapped. Again, the whole point is now, right, we're just stockpiling mana for next turn. So here on turn 5, we've got 5 mana from our lands. We got 7 with the Soaring. 8, 9, 10 for creatures with Summerwald Sage. So take a look at our hand. Galta right now is costing 6 less, so it is it is 6 mana, but we can definitely get it cheaper than that. I kind of love a world where we Kodama, which would put Galta down to just 2 mana, and then when Galta comes down, we could put the Dilation or even something like Tadiova in for free. So I think I would do that. I would cast the Kodama. What's going to happen here is we're going to have 3 triggers, the Beanstalk and then both the Emotis, right? Because we have 2 of them now. I'll draw first. Again, there's no rhyme or reason to how you would choose to do it. I'm just going to choose to draw first. Hydra Omnivore is a great one. So we'll get into our first Cascade. We see Cure Behemoth Beckoner. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater comes in, we draw a card. So remember, Kodama's not on the battlefield yet. So we will have a chance to draw. Unfortunately, we won't get to use Cure to drop anything with Kodama, but that's okay. And then Cascade 2 is Arcane Signet. Okay, so we're getting some mana. Kodama comes in, triggering Cure to draw us a card. All right, so now we used 6 mana. We've got 2 left, 4, 5. Remember that Galton now is down to just 2 mana, and we do have Cura, which can untap a permanent, meaning technically we could untap Summerwold Sage to get 3 more mana. That's why I love Cura in this deck, because you have the ability to just untap either your lands or your creatures. Remember that if we play something like Galto, we can drop one of these in our hand for free because of Kodama's ability. So I think what I would do is I would just go ahead and cast Galto here. I have more than enough mana left. We'll do the Up the Beanstalk trigger first. Again, you know, like I said before, it's your choice. I'll just do it. Remember, we get to Cascade twice. Beast Within. Now remember, Cascade, you either choose to cast it or it goes on the bottom. So if somebody has something to cast with Beast Within, I'll happily do it. And on Cascade 2, we see Thorix, a 5-mana creature that says spells we cast with mana value of 5 or greater cost 1 less to cast and can't be countered. So that comes in, drawing us off of Kiora. This will trigger, that will actually trigger Kodama, right? Because a permanent's come in. I'll put Galanra down for free with that one. Galta's going to come in. I'll draw off Kiora first, right? Just in case there's something better I could put in with his ability. I still haven't played my land this turn, so we'll do that next. I think I'll drop Tadiova in for free. Play the command tower, draw off of the Tadiova. Again, if I had another land, I could technically put it down here because this is a permanent and it didn't come in with Kodama's ability. But again, that's okay. I could cast something else this turn, but honestly, I think I'm willing to stop here, at least for the first playtest. I think you could start to see where this board state can go once you start putting these pieces together. Next turn, we have the Augury. We have Mind's Desire. Auton Soldier can come in as a copy of Imoti that's not legendary, giving us triple Cascade. Mind's Dilation. Not a bad thing to play and just value off our opponent's turn. Wondrous Crucible gives all of our permanents Ward 2. And beginning our end step, we mill 2 cards and exile a non-land card at random from our graveyard and just copy it, and we copy it without paying its mana, and we cast the copy without paying its mana cost, potentially more Cascade, right? I like this board state, not bad. Next turn, we're getting in for some, hopefully, big damage. So we'll move on to playtest number 2. 3-lander with Selvala, our way to start ramping. We see Coma and Astral Dragon and Reality Shift for some removal. So I like it so far. Ideally, right, we're looking to go for a turn 3 Selvala. Hopefully into a turn 4 Imoti at the moment. But again, we drew a tap land, so we'll play it turn 1. No reason to wait. The Hinterland Harler comes in tap 2. We can, or it comes in untapped turn 2. We can hold up the Reality Shift, but I think ideally we would just want Selvala here next turn. Play the Glimmer, showing the one of the forests in our hand, and we'll play Selvala. If Selvala is the biggest creature out, we'll draw, but I don't know that'll be the case. Ideally, what we're looking to do is, right, come back here turn 4. I'll get that that Reliquary down for sure, but tap into Selvala for 2, 3, 4, 5 for Imoti. We'll get to Cascading. Summerwold Sage is perfect. Maybe we draw off Imoti. Let's say for the purpose of this we do, but again, not necessarily guaranteed. But now, right, we've got 4, 7, and we can 3, 6, and this one we can put into to Selvala, which will get us up to 9 right now, plus land next turn. So we're rolling in it, right? Here in turn 5, we get a land down. So 4, 7, 10 right now, right? But if we were to play something else before we tap Selvala, right, then we could even get even more mana, right? Here, think about this. We could go 7 into Coma, right? And then tap Selvala for even more, which I think is my idea. So I would cast Coma using these guys here for 7. That's going to Cascade for 7, getting me a Cultivate, which is a-okay, right? That's just more mana for the future. We'll get an island. We have a forest in our hand, so we'll put an island in our hand. Then Coma's going to come in and probably undoubtedly draw us a card, right, off of Selvala. I'm sure it's the biggest power out there. Then I'd put that Man into Savala for 6. I was thinking Auton Soldier to copy Imoti, but I kind of like Sirach and Gorkla, right? Here's a way to give these big creatures haste when they come in. But we're going to get to Cascade off of it, so let's Cascade into Spark Double. Spark Double is going to come in as a copy of Imoti. And then Sirach and Gorkla will come in. Again, no card drawn there because it's the same power as Coma. And now we're just going to get some good value. So Coma is going to start making the Coma coils on everybody's turn. Remember, we have a choice. We could sack a coil to give Coma indestructible, or to tap a permanent down, and it can't use activated abilities. So I mean, we're going to come back to our turn with 4 Coma coils. Play a land for turn. Now we're getting double Cascade, right? And things are going to come in with haste. Remember, Astral Dragon has to copy a non-creature permanent. Love the idea of something like Wondrous Crucible. Can we make it happen? Put that into Selvala for 6 and 7 for the Crucible, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can. So we can go Crucible, right? Cascade twice off the Crucible for 7. We see Mind's Desire. So this is where the stack's going to start getting a little fun. So you still got 1 Cascade left here. Mind's Desire says, okay, we shuffle our library, then exile the top card of our library until the end of the next turn. We can play that card without paying its mana cost. We've cast 1 spell before it, so we're going to copy it again. So we'll resolve the copy first, then we're going to shuffle and resolve this one. So we can play both of those this turn without paying mana cost. We don't have to do it now. We get to just do it at any time. We'll do the second Cascade, getting into Coma. Okay. Or sorry, Kadama the East Tree. Kadama the East Tree comes in. It's not going to draw because it's not the biggest. Then the Crucible, but it does get a counter. So it won't because of the check, but that's okay. Then Crucible comes in, giving that ability. Kodama's going to see it come in, meaning we could put a permanent in if we want to. I'll put Auton Soldier in as a copy of Imoti. That's going to get... no, sorry, it won't get a counter because of... yeah, we'll get a counter because of Sirach and Gorkla. It just comes in a copy of Imoti. So we got 3 copies of Imoti, and we can still cast these. So we'll cast the one with the motion force, 3 triggers of Cascade on the stack, and I think I'll stop here because I think the Cascade train is just going to get too big. We're going to do this, Cascade, and then we can just do the Deluge. Honestly, you just do the Deluge for the Mind's Desire, right? Back out of your graveyard. Now we're storming. Geez, I can only imagine with casting it 3 times. And you could start to see where this Cascade train can get out of control. I'm not going to do it, but I think you can kind of see my point on that one. Getting into playtest number 3, keeping a 4-lander with Arcane Signet, Skull Spore Nexus, and then Gandalf Westward Voyager. This was from the Lords of the Rings commander decks. So whenever you cast spell with mana value 5 or greater, each opponent reveals the top card of the library. If any of them share a card type with the spell that you cast, you copy it, you choose new targets for the copy, and each opponent draws a card. Otherwise, you draw a card. So this is nice, potentially getting extra spells. They're copies so that you won't get the Cascade triggers, but the point still is you could just get free value, right, for what you're already trying to do. Turn 1 really doesn't matter here. I think we're just kind of working our way towards the Arcane Signet. We're looking at a turn 4 Imoti at this point, unless something else pops up. Thunderfoot Bailiff, a great attack enabler, +2/+2 for it, as long as you control your commander, and +2/+2 and trample for all other creatures as long as you control your commander. So a great one to have out right once Imoti comes out. That we can do on here in turn 3, but that's okay. We could just hold up our mana. Maybe we make people think we have something. But otherwise, on turn 4 here, get into the Imoti. Go ahead and start cascading into a Soul Ring. That's a-okay. More mana means more things that we can cast. Those bad boys back on the bottom. Coming into turn 5, 5, 7, 8 mana. Golta is not online yet. We would need 1 more power of creature on the board. Make Your Luck says that we can look at the top 3, could put 1 of them and make it plotted, so we can cast it at sorcery speed on a later turn without paying its mana cost. I kind of like Thunderfoot Bailiff here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would bring Galta down to just 4 mana, which I don't think we can do this turn. Could we do Skullspawn Nexus? No, we couldn't. 2, 3, or 5, 6. Yeah, I think we would be. Well, no, we actually could. So we could go Thunderfoot Bailiff here for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the Soul Ring. That Cascade has to be less, so we get Tadiova. Okay. Then remember that Thunderfoot Bailiff is 7 power, so this is going to be reduced to just 2 green. So we can cast it there. Cascading for 8. We see Decanter, a mana rock that gives us no maximum hand size and adds a mana make color. All right, so we're right. Now we're swimming in mana. Right now this is exactly where we want to be. Next turn, Thunderfoot Bailiff can start making other creatures a threat. We'll play the land and draw off of Tadiova again, just to see if we can get some more things to get into. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana. We can play Galta for sure. I think I like the Tidespout, right? Start to get that bounce happening, right? 8 mana, and we get Mind's Dilation, which will cascade. That all spells we cast have mana value 6 greater cascade, not from our hand to anyone. So that Dilation is going to cascade into Rashmi. So Rashmi comes in first. Rashmi says where we cast our first spell each turn, reveal the top card. If you can cast it as long as its mana value is less than the spell you're casting. So Dilation comes in, Tidespout comes in, and now I think we just cast, Galta for 2. Again, right, Cascade trigger, we get Inganessica. That's going to bounce a permanent with Tidespout. So is that Galta. So we bounce 2 permanents this turn, take an attack with, a couple of our creatures here. And now, Mind's Dilation is going to go off on our opponent's turns. If they're not careful, right, we could potentially cascade off their things, right, getting more value. But the truth is, now we have a great board to start attacking. We're just going to try to chip off at anything we can, right, to start getting value. We'll go one more turn on this one just to show what something like Rashmi can do. Unfortunately, I can't cascade off of anything in my hand. So I think we'll put the biggest thing on the stack I can, which is Gandalf. Rashmi is going to go off, revealing the top card of my library. You can cast it without paying if it's a spell with lesser mana value. If you don't cast it, put it in your hand. So I can't, right? So I put it in my hand. This comes in. So now we have access to it. It is 5 or greater, so we could potentially, do that with Thrix. But now we have something important like Inganesco, which says if we cast a creature spell with 3 or more mana from creatures, we get to draw a card. So my thought here is, if I paid for the Gandalf with lands, and I bounce off of that on the cast, we could go, Imoti plus Rashmi plus Inganesco to tap for 3 mana, plus 2 others for Thrix. That would draw us a card off of Inganesco. And then we would go to Cascade. Or sorry, no. Sorry, no Cascade. I apologize. No Cascade, it's not 6. But at least that drew us a card. Again, another cast for Tidespout. And now we're just looking for another big spell to Cascade from. We can play the Up the Beanstalk, draw a card. Play the land, draw off Tadiova. Again, just start churning through our deck. Play the Growth Spiral, draw off it. You can see we're starting to build the board state. Things are getting a little bit cheaper with Thrix, and we're having fun. But that's my Stompy version of Imoti Cascade. I've honestly thought about putting, or trying to put the list back together for the more sweaty one with these turn spells. If you are interested, let me know in the comments. I'd happily whip it back up together. It's something I've thought about in my kind of personal run to put some of my old decks back together. You'll notice some of them sprinkled through these last few weeks of December. But let me know what you think of Imoti, and I will catch you guys next time.